Were these women really monsters, or did old Hollywood punish them for refusing to behave? Behind the gowns and studio smiles were feuds, gossip empires, ruined reputations, and careers that burned hotter than the cameras. This list digs into the actresses, rebels, and power players Hollywood called difficult, dangerous, or scandalous. Some destroyed others. Some were destroyed first. And one woman proved gossip could be deadlier than any box office flop. Jean Harlow. The platinum hair was innocent-looking, but the story around Jean Harlow became one of old Hollywood's earliest dark legends. She was sold as the ultimate screen siren, young, glowing, flirtatious, and almost unreal under studio lights. But behind that carefully polished image came the scandal Hollywood never knew how to bury. In 1932, her husband Paul Byrne was found dead in their home, and the tragedy instantly became a gossip storm. Was it heartbreak? Was it a secret? Was the studio protecting its most valuable blonde bombshell? The official story did not stop the whispers. Harlow herself was not a villain, but the public treated her life like a mystery novel with lipstick on the cover. Her glamour became mixed with suspicion, tragedy, and the ugly hunger of the press. That is why she belongs here. Not because she was cruel, but because old Hollywood turned her personal pain into entertainment. Harlow's image was built to sparkle, but the scandal proved something colder. In that era, even a woman's grief could be sold as publicity. Gloria Swanson. Gloria Swanson did not just act like a star. She carried herself like Hollywood owed her a throne. Long before the industry became obsessed with comeback stories, Swanson had already lived through the full rise and fall of silent-era royalty. In the 1920s, she represented luxury, ego, beauty, and excess, the kind of star audiences did not simply watch, but worshipped. Then sound changed everything. The industry moved forward, and many silent stars were pushed aside like expensive furniture from a forgotten mansion. But Swanson's legend became dangerous again in 1950 with Sunset Boulevard, where she played Norma Desmond, a fading star who could not accept that the cameras had stopped loving her. The role worked because it felt too close to the truth. Viewers wondered where Gloria ended and Norma began. That is what makes her so fascinating on this list. She was not worst in a simple sense. She was the living symbol of Hollywood vanity, survival, and obsession. Swanson proved that old stardom never truly dies. It just waits in the shadows for one more close-up. Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn was the kind of woman old Hollywood did not know how to package, and that made her dangerous. She wore trousers when studios wanted gowns. She spoke with sharp confidence when executives preferred soft obedience. She rejected the helpless female image and carried herself like someone who did not need permission to exist. By 1938, after several box office disappointments, she was famously branded Box Office Poison, a label that could have destroyed a weaker star. But Hepburn was not weak. She was stubborn, intelligent, athletic, opinionated, and almost allergic to being controlled. That made her difficult to market, difficult to manage, and impossible to erase. The scandal around Hepburn was not about crime or cruelty. It was about defiance. She represented a type of woman Hollywood feared, one who did not beg to be liked. Later, that same independence became part of her greatness. But at the time, it made studio men nervous and critics impatient. Hepburn fits this list because she exposes the hypocrisy of old Hollywood. A man with confidence was a leader, but a woman with confidence was a problem. Miriam Hopkins. Miriam Hopkins could smile like a society queen, but behind the elegance was a competitive fire that made old Hollywood nervous. By 1939, her rivalry with Bette Davis during The Old Maid had become one of the industry's sharpest behind-the-scenes battles. Hopkins was talented, stylish, and intelligent, but she also had a reputation for being difficult, emotional, and fiercely protective of her screen presence. In a business where actresses were constantly compared, replaced, and ranked, Hopkins fought like every close-up mattered, because it did. Her tension with Davis was not just personal gossip, It revealed how brutal Hollywood could be when two powerful women were forced to compete for dominance in the same frame. Directors wanted grace, but Hopkins brought pressure. Co-stars wanted harmony, but she brought rivalry. That is why she fits this list better than Frances Farmer. Hopkins was not destroyed by the system in the same tragic way. She actively battled inside it. Her legacy is a reminder that in old Hollywood, ambition in a woman was often treated like a scandal. Lana Turner. Lana Turner looked like pure studio-manufactured fantasy, but her life carried one of the darkest headlines in old Hollywood history. She was discovered young, transformed into a glamour icon, and sold to audiences as the perfect blonde dream. But behind that image was a turbulent private life full of controlling men, tabloid obsession, and emotional chaos. Then came 1958, the year her boyfriend Johnny Stompanato was fatally stabbed by her teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane. The case became a national scandal almost overnight. The courtroom, the cameras, the whispers, and the headlines turned Turner's home tragedy into a public spectacle. The death was ruled justifiable homicide, but the damage to her image was permanent. Audiences could never look at Lana Turner the same way again. She became more than a movie star. She became a symbol of glamour with blood underneath it. Her entry is powerful because it shows the cruel contrast of old Hollywood. The studios sold women as flawless fantasies, but when real danger entered their lives, the public treated their pain like a thriller. Turner survived, but the scandal never fully left the room. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton's story feels like a Hollywood cautionary tale written with a broken glass pen. At first, she had the ingredients studios loved: beauty, confidence, danger, and that electric screen presence that made people look twice. But by 1951, her name became tied to scandal after a violent love triangle involving actors Franchot Tone and Tom Neal. The incident did not just damage her reputation, it changed the way Hollywood looked at her. Suddenly, Payton was no longer treated as a promising actress. She became a headline, a warning, a woman the industry could point at and whisper about. From there, her career collapsed with brutal speed. Addiction, unstable relationships, financial ruin, and public humiliation followed her until her final years became almost unbearable to read about. What makes Payton's entry so dark is how little mercy the system showed once she fell. Hollywood loved dangerous women when they sold tickets, but it abandoned them when the danger became real. Barbara Payton was not simply scandalous. She was proof that old Hollywood could build a woman into a fantasy, then watch her disappear without blinking. Clara Bow. Clara Bow did not enter Hollywood quietly. She exploded into it like a match dropped on gasoline. By 1927, with It, she became the original It girl, a symbol of youth, sex appeal, rebellion, and modern female freedom. But old Hollywood had a cruel habit. It loved wild women until they became too wild to control. Bow's Brooklyn accent, working-class background, emotional openness, and chaotic personal life made her a perfect target for gossip columns. The press turned every rumor into a weapon. Her friendships, romances, parties, and private struggles were treated like public property. Then came courtroom scandals, mental exhaustion, and the pressure of sound films, which made the industry even more ruthless. Clara was not dangerous in the way Hollywood claimed. She was vulnerable, overworked, and surrounded by people eager to profit from her image. But because she refused to fit the polished studio lady mold, she became labeled reckless and unstable. Her tragedy is that Hollywood created the It girl, then punished the real woman behind it. Clara Bow was not the worst woman in Hollywood. She was one of its first major sacrifices. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner walked into old Hollywood like trouble wearing diamonds, and the studios never quite knew whether to sell her or fear her. By 1951, after Showboat and her rising status as a major glamour figure, Gardner had become impossible to ignore. She was beautiful, sharp-tongued, restless, and famously allergic to fake studio manners. Her romances became tabloid fuel, especially her stormy marriage to Frank Sinatra, where passion, jealousy, fame, and self-destruction seemed to collide in public. But what made Ava so controversial was not just romance. It was the way she refused to pretend. She drank, cursed, laughed loudly, loved recklessly, and carried herself with a confidence that did not ask permission. In a world where actresses were expected to be delicate products, Gardner behaved like a grown woman, with appetites, anger, and independence. That made her magnetic on-screen and difficult off-screen. Directors could capture her beauty, but nobody could fully control her spirit. Ava fits this list because she represented the woman old Hollywood secretly wanted but publicly judged. She was not a villain. She was dangerous because she was honest. Bette Davis. Bette Davis did not need a weapon in her hand. Her voice could cut a room in half. By 1962, with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, her legendary feud with Joan Crawford had become more than gossip. It had turned into Hollywood warfare. Davis was brilliant, disciplined, stubborn, and brutally honest, the kind of actress who treated weakness like an insult. She fought studios, challenged bad scripts, demanded better roles, and refused to soften her edges just to be liked. That made her one of the greatest performers of the studio era, but also one of the most feared. Co-stars could find her intimidating. Executives knew she would not smile through nonsense. Critics admired her fire, even when they found her difficult. Her controversy came from the same place as her greatness. She cared too much to be polite. In an industry built on image, Davis built power through talent and confrontation. She did not simply want to be famous, she wanted to win. Bette Davis belongs here because old Hollywood called her difficult when what it really meant was unbeatable. And sometimes, being unbeatable scared people more than being bad. Mae West. Mae West did not whisper scandal. She turned it into a business model. By 1933, after She Done Him Wrong, she became one of the most talked about women in America, not because she followed Hollywood rules, but because she bent them until the censors panicked. West's humor was bold, suggestive, confident, and completely under her control. She wrote many of her own lines, shaped her own persona, and understood something studios hated admitting. Audiences loved a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. Conservative critics saw her as vulgar. Censors saw her as a threat. Studio executives saw her as profitable, but risky. That contradiction made her powerful. Mae West was not scandalous because she lost control. She was scandalous because she had too much control. She turned desire into comedy, female confidence into box office, and public outrage into free advertising. The more people complained, the more curious audiences became. Her place on this list is essential because she did not accidentally shock old Hollywood. She walked straight into its moral panic and smiled. Mae West proved that sometimes the worst woman in Hollywood is simply the one brave enough to enjoy herself. Lupe Velez. Lupe Velez was sold to audiences as fire and then punished for burning too brightly. Known as the Mexican Spitfire, she became famous for her explosive comic timing, fierce energy, and larger-than-life personality. But that nickname also trapped her inside a stereotype. Hollywood loved turning her temper, accent, and cultural identity into entertainment, then acted shocked when the real woman refused to stay small. By 1944, after years of public romances, feuds, tabloid mockery, and emotional pressure, Velez's life ended in tragedy, and the gossip machine showed little mercy even after her death. That is what makes her story so disturbing. Was she truly difficult, or was she a woman forced to perform a fiery image until people forgot she was human? The press often treated her pain like a joke, reducing a complex actress into punchlines and scandal. Yet beneath the headlines was a performer with timing, charisma, and ambition in an industry that rarely gave Latina stars dignity or control. Lupe Velez belongs here because old Hollywood branded her chaotic while benefiting from that very image. Her legacy is not just scandal. It is the cost of being turned into a character before being allowed to be a person. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead did not behave like a movie star trying to be approved. She behaved like a scandal daring Hollywood to keep up. By 1944, with Lifeboat, she had proven she could dominate the screen with nothing but voice, attitude, and dangerous elegance. But her off-screen reputation often became louder than her performances. She was famous for partying, flirting, shocking polite society, and saying the kind of things studio publicists could not clean up fast enough. Tallulah was not built for the careful, controlled image Hollywood preferred for women. She was messy, brilliant, theatrical, funny, and impossible to tame. That made her fascinating, but it also made her a constant target for gossip. The industry loved her charisma, but feared her lack of apology. She turned excess into identity and made scandal feel like part of the act. Yet underneath the wild image was a serious performer who often got reduced to her outrageous behavior. Tallulah belongs near the top because she exposes old Hollywood's double standard perfectly. Men could be reckless geniuses, but women were called disasters. Her real crime was not being wild, it was refusing to pretend she was innocent. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford did not just want fame, she wanted control, and that made people afraid of her. By 1962, with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, her rivalry with Bette Davis had become one of the most poisonous legends in Hollywood history. Crawford was disciplined, image-obsessed, ambitious, and famously demanding. She understood that old Hollywood could replace a woman the moment she looked weak, so she built herself like armor: perfect makeup, perfect posture, perfect public face. But behind that polished surface came stories of feuds, insecurity, ruthless career moves, and emotional battles that never seemed to end. Later, Mommy Dearest would turn her private life into a permanent public trial, making her name almost inseparable from accusations of cruelty. Still, Crawford's story is more complicated than a simple villain portrait. She was a woman who survived poverty, studio politics, aging, and a business designed to discard actresses after their peak. Her hunger made her powerful, but it also made her frightening. Joan Crawford fits this list because she represents the darkest side of ambition in old Hollywood. She did not merely chase the spotlight. She fought like someone terrified of being thrown back into darkness. Luella Parsons. Luella Parsons did not need a camera to control Hollywood. She had a column, and that was often more dangerous. By 1937, she had become one of the most powerful gossip voices in America, capable of shaping reputations with a few carefully placed sentences. Stars smiled for her because they feared what could happen if they did not. Studio heads respected her because she could turn private mistakes into national conversation. Parsons represented a different kind of old Hollywood power, not beauty, not acting, not box office magic, but access. She knew secrets, protected favorites, punished enemies, and helped create the terrifying idea that a star's private life belonged to the public. What made her controversial was not just gossip, it was influence without accountability. One rumor could damage a career, one flattering item could revive a fading name. She helped make Hollywood feel glamorous, but she also helped make it paranoid. Luella belongs this high because she was not simply reporting on scandal, she was part of the machine that manufactured it. In a town obsessed with image, she proved the cruelest power was not always on screen. Sometimes it was hiding in tomorrow morning's newspaper. Hedda Hopper. Hedda Hopper was not just controversial, she was feared, and that is why she earns the top spot. By 1947, her gossip column had become a weapon in a Hollywood already trembling with politics, blacklists, betrayals, and career-killing whispers. Hopper had once been an actress, but her real power came when she stopped chasing roles and started judging the people who had them. She wore outrageous hats, smiled for cameras, and wrote with enough force to make stars panic before breakfast. Unlike ordinary gossip, Hopper's influence reached into politics and ideology. She could help stain a reputation, pressure studios, and feed the atmosphere of suspicion that haunted the industry during the blacklist era. To some readers, she was a patriotic truth-teller. To others, she was a ruthless destroyer hiding behind moral outrage. That contradiction makes her the perfect number one. She was not a tragic starlet, not a misunderstood rebel, not merely a difficult actress. She was a power player who understood fear better than almost anyone in Hollywood. Hedda Hopper proved that in old Hollywood, the most dangerous woman was not always the one causing scandal. Sometimes it was the one deciding who got buried by it. So were they truly the worst, or just the women Hollywood feared most? Behind every scandal was a system built on control, gossip, beauty, and punishment. Some of these women broke rules, some broke reputations, and some were judged simply for refusing to shrink. Old Hollywood sold glamour, but its most dangerous stories were always hiding behind the spotlight.